BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Wednesday, and on Wednesdays of this year, I've been doing a regular segment about the Phantom Killer from 1946, but I do have a couple of announcements before we begin. The first is that on the Anything Goes Friday segment, I will be revisiting the case of Stephen Avery and the story of Making a Murderer, which focuses on the 2005 murder of Teresa Halbach. That episode will be coming out on Friday, so I invite you to like and subscribe to the channel to follow along with all of these discussions. And last year on the channel, somebody recommended that I do a discussion series on the New Orleans Axeman, and in the near future, there will be a Wednesday segment devoted to that subject. The Phantom Killer episodes will continue for a couple more weeks, but then I will be revisiting the case of the Axeman, because I think that there's a very important reason. And one of you guys in the comment section even said that the Zodiac Killer, Jack the Ripper, the Phantom Killer, and the New Orleans Axeman are like the four horsemen of unsolved true crime mysteries, because these serial killer stories are part truth, like they're part fact, and then they're part fiction. And a lot of them have some bizarre connections to newspapers, particularly the Zodiac and Jack the Ripper, but the Axeman also has a certain influence from a journalist who responded to the story and wrote a very influential piece about it, and his name was Robert Talan. And I covered some of this last year, but I'd like to do something a little bit more expansive. And another reason was because the person who recommended the series last year said that she thought that it would be a good subject for October and getting close to Halloween. So look out for a new discussion series here on this channel. But as for today, I wanted to talk about the Zodiac Phantom Killer connection, and I was going to do a completely different take on the Phantom Killer story. However, I happened by chance to find a video online from a channel called Crime and Wine, W-I-N-E, and I watched her video on the Zodiac Killer, Phantom Killer connection, and it just got me thinking about some things in a different way, and I invite you to check out her channel one more time, Crime and Wine. And it is one of those shows where talking about true crime, and she is drinking wine throughout the episode. And I have to give her credit. I don't even know her name. Maybe she does the channel anonymously. But I do have to give her credit because she's someone who actually sounds drunk when she's doing one of those true crime alcoholic episodes. Like, I used to follow another channel called True Crime Brewery for a while, and there are even some other ones out there, but I noticed that some people that would do these true crime drinking channels didn't actually sound like they were drunk, and I give her credit for putting herself out there and being authentic. But the Phantom Killer was a serial killer that operated in 1946, and more or less the Phantom Killer was a spree killer. The first crime was committed on February 22nd of that year, which saw the attack on Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean LaRae. And this is an attack where the victims survived, and they were able to give a detailed description of their attacker, saying that there was this man who was wearing a pillowcase over his head, or some type of sack, but there were holes cut out for the eyes and the mouth, and that he beat Jimmy Hollis with a blunt object, which may have been a gun, but some people also theorize that it could have been a different type of blunt object, like maybe something from a car kit, and his skull was fractured, and then Mary Jean LeRae was sexually assaulted. Then the next attack occurred about a month later. It's February 22nd to around March 24th when there was the attack on Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore, and in this instance, both of the victims were murdered, and they weren't able to give any particular descriptions, but the crime was committed by gun, and they found 32 caliber shell casings left behind. They believe it was from a 32 caliber automatic pistol. And then the next attack is perhaps the most famous one, the murder of Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin. And in that instance, again, both victims were murdered and they were unable to give a detailed description of the attacker. So that really creates the Phantom Killer persona, because by then the town of Texarkana is aware that there is this Phantom Killer who's going out and attacking couples who are parked in cars at lovers' lanes. And you notice that in each one of those instances, there's a man and a woman who is present in a car. And then the Phantom Killer would do something completely different on May 3rd of 1946 by murdering Virgil Starks, who was sitting in his home in an armchair. He was reading the newspaper, and then he listened to a radio program, and he was shot. The Phantom Killer also tried to murder Virgil Starks' wife, Katie, and she was severely injured, but she was able to survive the attack and not give any description of the perpetrator. Contrary to something that was said in Crime and Wine, the host of that program said that the same shell casings were found from the three attacks, or that from the three attacks that involved a gun. They all had the same shell casings, and they were all 22 caliber. I do not believe that that is correct, and there are some discrepancies. When I read the biography on Lone Wolf Gonzalez, it also talked about the Phantom Killer. They said a 38 was used, but most sources say that the murders of Griffin and Moore, as well as Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin, used a 32 caliber, and the murder of Virgil Starks used a 22 caliber. So that is very important, because there really is almost no evidence to actually connect the murder of Virgil Starks to the Phantom Killer, thus bringing the media. And there are these theories out there that these are unconnected murders that have just been stitched together through not exactly overactive imagination, but Jesse Walker wrote a book called The United States of Paranoia, which talks about how human beings are just pattern-seeking individuals. And sometimes people make patterns, and they force a pattern onto a set of events that don't necessarily belong together. Now, I believe that there was a Phantom Killer, and if it is true that the same gun was used in the Griffin Moore murders as well as the Booker Martin murders, then almost certainly there was a Phantom Killer partnered with the fact that there's this hooded perpetrator targeting lovers' lanes, and there's this sexually motivated serial killer. Alright? But with the Zodiac Killer, the Zodiac committed his first crime at a lover's lane, or in a parking lot where there are two victims, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, on December 20th of 1968. They were both murdered and unable to give a description, but the Zodiac used a 22. Then, on July 4th of 1969, the Zodiac would murder Darlene Ferrin while she was sitting in a parked car at Blue Rock Springs Park. The male victim in that one, Mike Michaud, would survive the shooting, but again, you have a man and a woman in a car. Next, you would have the Lake Berryessa stabbing on September 27th of 1969, the one time the Zodiac wore his hooded costume that had the Zodiac symbol in the center, and he approached Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, who were about 500 yards from their car, so they weren't seated in the car. That is a big difference. And Cecilia would pass away from her injuries, Brian would survive, and much like the Phantom Killer, the Zodiac would deviate for the fifth murder and murder Paul Stine, a lone man. And Virgil Starks was not alone at the time. He was with his wife Katie in their house. Paul Stine was a taxi driver who was killed, and to the best of our knowledge, there was no other individual in the taxi. Now, something that I heard on Crime and Wine was that she openly made a statement that this is either the same person or it is a copycat. And I'm so glad she said that, just so I wasn't alone in thinking that the Phantom Killer was most likely an inspiration for the Zodiac Killer. I've said it once and I'll say it again that I believe that Jack the Ripper and the Phantom Killer were both inspirations for the Zodiac, and I believe that Jack the Ripper was also an inspiration for the New Orleans Axeman, which I'll be talking about in the future series. And if you would like to support any of these efforts, you can go over to buymeacoffee.com/blackboxnerd88. There's a link to that in the description box, and anybody who makes a donation or contribution via buymeacoffee.com will get a shout out on Zodiac Mondays. Any donation or contribution will be used for things like purchasing true crime books to talk to you guys about, or equipment for the show. Everything will be put back into things. But to get back to today's episode, I've noticed that a lot of you guys in the comment section do not really think that the Zodiac was inspired by the Phantom Killer. Instead, I'm just seeing that people think that there were just two different spree killers, because that's something else that needs to be reinforced. There are serial killers who just blend in the shadows and they just try to live a normal life and then they go out and unleash their destructive tendencies behind closed doors. It reminds me of something that I was talking about on Zodiac Mondays when some people said that certain psychopaths have an enormous amount of impulse control. Impulsivity is something that is included in the Hare checklist that tests for psychopathy, but it isn't a guaranteed requirement. And I really do think it was an insightful statement, because some of the serial killers out there, such as the ones who are trying to blend into society, are hiding their destructive tendencies. But you will notice with a lot of serial killers that get discussed in perhaps the more mainstream discussions, they do very weird things. Like, they give warning signs of their destructive behavior. Jeffrey Dahmer would break out into fits of just absolutely bizarre and obnoxious behavior. Herb Baumeister, the I-70 Strangler, once urinated on his boss's desk at work and was just trying to make a joke out of it, and somehow he didn't get fired. And not to mention other people like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, who would do things like abusing animals. He would even try to chop down the wall of someone else's building with an axe. Yes, there are all of these warning signs that this person is absolutely off the rails, but they get away with it because they're just so plain ordinary and non-threatening. And the biggest problem, though, with establishing a Zodiac Killer Phantom Killer connection is we don't know who both of these serial killers are. But in the video that I was discussing previously, they sort of asked the challenge question: what can we learn? The timeline. Now, how would this fit into the descriptions? And even the host of the program was somewhat skeptical on how you would deal with witness descriptions in the Zodiac Killer case of someone 25 years old. Brian Hartnell estimated that the voice of the Zodiac Killer could be coming from a 20-year-old to a 30-year-old, so you have a possibility that the guy's as young as 20 years old. And I mean, he would have been, let's see, how old in 1946? He wouldn't even have been born at the time. There's 23 years from 1946 to 1969 when the Zodiac Killer has announced his name. Now, the only way to do this is to look at some of the witness descriptions that were done after the Stein shooting, after the murder of Paul Stein on October 11th of 1969. And much as the host of Crime and Wine pointed out, Officer Donald Fowkes' testimony or witness encounter of the Zodiac Killer would be somewhat valuable, because you're not only looking at his description of the Zodiac, where he's estimating that you have an older perpetrator, and there's even that one story that the Zodiac had some gray in his hair that Fowke stated that, but also partner with the sketches that were done based on the witness account of the Robbins kids, not Donald Fowke, but the Robbins kids who saw the Zodiac leave Paul Stein's taxi. And when you actually look at the colorized composite sketch, or the composite brought to life, if you will, it does seem like there is an older perpetrator, and I don't know about the 20 to 25-year-old Zodiac, although anything is possible. I do not believe that the Zodiac was a teenager in 1969, like the people who are proposing suspects such as Louis Myers or George Senda or Steven Seagal. Sorry, but those stories are most likely not true because I think the Zodiac was somewhat older, and the letters that the Zodiac wrote also do not carry the feel of someone who is a teenager. But I mean, what are the reasons that would suggest that the Phantom Killer and the Zodiac Killer are different people? The first is that the Phantom Killer did not write letters. The Phantom Killer did not make phone calls after his crimes. The Phantom Killer did not write a message on the car door, even if you forget the letters and the phone calls. I mean, no, the Phantom Killer doesn't have like a pen or a marker or some way of leaving a message behind on the car door. The Phantom Killer didn't have a symbol attributed to him. The Phantom Killer did not wear said attributed symbol on his hooded costume. And the people who are believers in the Zodiac Phantom connection, who think that these two serial killers are one and the same, have a very simple response to that. It was a younger, inexperienced serial killer, a spree killer, someone who truly tried to just commit a series of murders in a short time frame. This is the important thing about spree killers. Somebody who is just trying to inflict a bunch of damage, and then there's going to be either a cooling off period or a period of permanent secession, or I shouldn't have said the word secession, but maybe the crimes will cease completely, and then this person will not kill again. But both the Phantom and the Zodiac are definitely spree killers. Both of them seem to be driven by heterosexual animosity. Now, to the people who think that the Zodiac killer was gay, almost certainly they cannot support the Phantom Killer connection when they have sexual assaults that were taken place when someone is targeting a woman, and there just appears to be some genuine type of heterosexual animosity, and the woman becomes the primary focus, and I think that you're just going to be barking up the wrong tree if you're going to propose a homosexual suspect and then say that your suspect was also the Phantom Killer, although maybe an impotent suspect, someone who did not have proper sexual functioning. That case might come up a little bit more frequently in the Zodiac Phantom connection. But the age range works out, the timeline works out completely. But as far as alternatives on Crime and Wine, the host proposed that a challenge would be, what about the suspects in the Phantom case that are not suspects in the Zodiac Killer case? One of them is Dudy Tennyson, also known as H.B. Tennyson, who committed suicide in 1948 and confessed to the crimes. One of them is the German prisoner of war who was allegedly a red-haired man, and the theory is that he wore the hooded costume to hide his red hair because he would have been easily identifiable. 1946, post-World War II time frame, that is. And then a third one is the suspect that was discussed in her video, Yule Swinney, the prime suspect, because she points out that Yule Swinney is a car thief, and he's arrested for stealing cars, and he says the very famous line when he is arrested, "Oh, you want me for a lot more than stealing cars," and some people think that he means that he was arrested for being the Phantom Killer, and also they said that he had bolts in his possession, or some type of mechanical part in his possession. I don't even want to use any terminology because I'm a little hazy on that detail. And this mechanically related item came from Virgil Starks' mechanic shop, the final victim of the Phantom Killer. So was Yule Swinney someone who directly knew Virgil Starks? On Crime and Wine, it was proposed that Yule Swinney may have had a direct connection to multiple victims because he was residing in the area and he's present in the area and he's arrested in the area. So it seems very plausible that he would have known multiple Phantom Killer victims. And also his wife, Peggy, contributes a lot of testimony that would suggest that he was indeed the Phantom Killer. And one point, though, that I shared in the Lone Wolf Gonzalez episode was that Peggy may have actually been present at one of the crime scenes, and they found a heel print that looked like it was from a woman's shoe that was in the place where she said that it should have been. But a lot of these sources are coming at it secondhand. That isn't exactly from the case file. That is just from a statement that doesn't appear to be cited too well that is attributed to Peggy Swinney. But the thing that's pointed out on Crime and Wine was that there was a complete halt to the crimes after Yule Swinney goes into custody. And that does that not suggest that he was the Phantom Killer? Why did the crime stop in 1946? I mean, does that not make Yule Swinney look like a more plausible suspect? I've never liked him as a suspect in the past. I've always thought that a lot of these prime suspects just have overinflated cases built for them. That some guy made an ambiguous statement, oh, you want me for more than stealing cars? Oh, well, he must be the Phantom Killer, then we want him for more than stealing cars. And furthermore, what about this whole unconnected murders angle? Perhaps he did commit the murder of Virgil Starks. Does that mean he committed all of the Phantom Killer's crimes? And I'm just not really quite sure. But more importantly, the case does remain unsolved, and they were unable to convict Yule Swinney of the crimes. And in the Crime and Wine video, the host said that he was sentenced to life in prison for stealing the cars, and she asked the question to the audience, were you aware of that? Did you know that you could get life in prison for stealing cars? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. I mean, and I even saw this video once online of a man was sentenced to life in prison because he picked up a vodka bottle in a convenience mart and he beat the clerk over the head with it. And because he had been a repeat offender and he just showed absolute indifference, and then he was laughing about the sentence in the courtroom. And I completely understood that. Yes, I mean, people can get life in prison for minor offenses, especially if they have a rap sheet. But Yule Swinney would serve 26 years was in prison, was it? And then he would get out in the early 1970s. Let's see, that would go till 1972, 73, thereabouts. So he did get out of prison, but more importantly, did he actually commit the Phantom Killer crimes? I don't think there's anything of value in saying that Yule Swinney was arrested and then the crime stopped. That's focusing on what somebody did not do. And the reason why I brought up Steven Seagal earlier was Steven Seagal is not a real Zodiac killer suspect. It's just the Zodiac killer has a halt in activity from 1971 to 1973. Really, the years of 72 and 73, there aren't Zodiac letters coming in, there aren't crimes committed. But then there's a Zodiac letter in 1974, the Exorcist letter. Well, Steven Seagal was out of California in 1972 and 1973, and then returns in 1974. He spent those 2 years in Japan studying martial arts, and he may have, studying martial arts at that point, and then he goes on to open a dojo later on in his life. But I just wanted to point out there's so many people who are out of town, out of the country even, for 2 year periods, and then their timelines match up with a serial killer, but that doesn't mean that they were the serial killer. And we've talked about the Zodiac a lot on this channel. How is it so different to think that somebody either committed a series of murders and they stopped because they were afraid of getting caught? That could be one motivation. They moved to a different part of the country. They were stationed in the military and then they were restationed somewhere else. Maybe they were sent to a different part of the world. Or what I call the frustrated serial killer, that somebody's only committing these types of crimes when they're at an emotionally low point in their life. And I mean, there's so many reasons why somebody would stop committing the crimes voluntarily. And on Crime and Wine, one point that was even discussed was that there have been so many decoys that were set up by the Phantom Killer, by the police that are trying to track the Phantom Killer, by the authorities. They're setting up decoys to try and catch this killer. And did the Phantom just think that it wasn't safe for him to keep committing crimes because he would almost certainly get caught. And I think that that's also a defendable standpoint. Now, was Yule Swinney the Phantom Killer? I mean, it's possible. Or were these actually all just unconnected crimes that have been linked together through very small pieces of information and very small pieces of evidence? That is also possible. But I think what's more important to note with the Zodiac Phantom connection is geography. The Phantom Killer is operating on the Texas-Arkansas border, and the Zodiac doesn't seem to be drawing particular connections to Texarkana if he were indeed the same killer. I mean, the Zodiac has an Albany letter and then goes on to talk about the Atlanta child murders in the 1980s, although maybe that letter wasn't authentic. But, I mean, where is the Texarkana connection? Where is the Zodiac saying something about being the Phantom Killer? I mean, in all of the Zodiac letters, not a single thing saying, oh yeah, by the way, I was also the Phantom Killer in 1946. The closest we have is that the Zodiac is saying that he was the Red Phantom, red with rage, meaning that he was the Phantom, because red would be an adjective, and I have to give credit to Ray Grant for that particular observation, but that was from a letter in 1974, as opposed to 1969 or 1970. So I think that the Phantom Killer connection is very loose, and it's mostly just looking at the similarities of the crimes. That's what you have. I mean, that's it. That's what you have. You have crimes that were committed in similar ways. But someone also pointed out, oh yeah, of course, I think it was mentioned just in the crime and wine video, where the host said very simply that the Zodiac stabbed two of the victims, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, and the Phantom Killer did not stab the victim. The Zodiac also did not beat the victims with a blunt object, but the Phantom Killer beat the first two victims, Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean LeRae. So, is that not a major difference that is worth considering? But as of now, I'd like to turn it over to you guys, and if you would like to hear a different take on the subject, I have an episode called The Phantom Killer versus the Zodiac Killer Psychological Breakdown. That is more just absolutely not entertaining the connection that these are the same person. But as I said, I was going to cover the subject in a different way today. I'm going to talk about a different aspect of the Phantom Killer. But, I mean, her video got me thinking about this a lot. And you guys can always share your ideas in the comment section down below. I've taken a strong stance that I do not believe these are the same people, but I definitely believe the Phantom was an inspiration for the Zodiac Killer. And I should say the Phantom Killer, as opposed to the Phantom from the comics by Lee Falk. But there's even a possibility that that Phantom was also an inspiration for the Zodiac. And if you want to hear more about Zodiac inspirations, please tune in next Monday here on Black Box Online Radio for the Zodiac Monday episode, Zodiac Killer News Report, and I will share some more things about inspirations that could have driven the Zodiac to not only commit his crimes, but also develop his persona. Please share anything you want in the comments section. Anybody can rate the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box. And there is always BlackBoxNet88 over on Instagram. That's all for me now. Until next time.